Greetings and salutations. Today we will be covering the Nagaokakyo Hill Homicide. On May 23, 1979, 32-year-old Keiko Mizuno, along with 43-year-old Eiko Akashi, a pair of Japanese housewives who lived in the small city of Nagaokakyo, would meet a terrible fate. They were close friends and part-time co-workers at a supermarket in Izumaya, located by Nagaoka Tenji train station. After the two finished their morning shift, which was from about 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., they purchased some bentos and set off for a hill in order to go to a bracken grove. Supposedly, they intended to go to the hill to reap warabi bracken. They intended to use this warabi in order to make mochi, which they planned to give to their friends and family. It must be noted that Nayoma Mountain is in no way a thicket of wilderness, and that the grove itself was just a few scant kilometers from the supermarket, and not too far off from the train station, which is on the east side of Noyama. This said mountain was also a hot spot for gathering herbs and plants. Akashi and Mizuno would end up leaving their bikes at the beginning of the mountain proper, and then proceed to walk up the pathway up the side of the slope. Witnesses would go on to say that the last time they saw the pair was around 11 a.m. Neither of the two women would ever leave the mountain alive. That afternoon, Keiko's husband would be informed that his wife had failed to pick up her son from nursery school. This left him rather concerned since it was outside the norm. Claims have been made that after hearing this news, her husband would go to the grove in order to see if he could find his missing wife. However, he could find no trace of his wife or her friend. The following day, the pair's husbands would contact the police and request an official search for the two be commenced. This led to at least 30 officers being deployed to search the mountain where the pair had gone missing. While officers would scour the area, they initially would find nothing of the two women other than their bicycles. A second search was organized on the 25th. Said search party was made up of 120 local residents who had cooperated and were guided by the authorities. On the 25th, around 10:30 a.m., 2 whole days after the pair had gone missing, their bodies would be discovered near the hilltop, just a few scant meters apart from each other in a more densely wooded area. Both women's lives had been ended in a rather distinct way. Kikyo had been stabbed and her body was marred with more than 50 stab wounds. The blade itself was left plunged deep into her chest, and it was noted to be a kitchen knife. Multiple organs had been punctured and irrevocably destroyed by said knife. Supposedly, she had been left partly undressed from the waist down. Her clothing had been found close by. Eikyo was strangled, and while none of her clothing seemed to have been removed, traces of human skin and hair were found, along with someone's bodily fluids being detected within her. This evidence could only be used to determine the individual's blood type, being O. Though both women had met their grisly end in different ways, they had injuries that were near mirrors of each other, including signs of being repeatedly struck in the ribs and the sternum, to the point that Eikyo had her ribs shattered and her liver ruptured due to the impacts. Said injuries would necessitate someone rather strong being the perpetrator. The list of injuries they suffered is rather stomach-churning. This would include both women having their Achilles tendons cut right to the bone, which was likely in order to prevent them from escaping. It was probable that this was the first injury that the women suffered. After having said wound inflicted upon them, they would be completely at the mercy of whomever had done the vile act towards them. Cutting the Achilles tendon would prevent you from being able to bend or put downward pressure and or push off from the injured leg. Cutting both would essentially prevent you from walking. From the information the authorities have gathered, it is believed that the attack occurred between 12 and 2:30. Their empty bento boxes were found near their backpacks, which implied that they had both had enough time to fully finish their meals and pack prior to their victimization. When investigators searched the victims' belongings, they found a crumpled receipt from Izumaya in Eiko's right pocket, and it appeared that even in the depths of fear, Eiko had left detectives one final clue. Written in her handwriting on the back of the receipt was a hastily scrawled message, which read, "I'm stalked. Please help. This guy is bad." The message had been written in a rather simplified version of kanji, parts of strokes even being missing, implying that Eiko had written it while being particularly frightened or in a hurry. Some have theorized that the note was intended reported to have been discreetly passed to anyone who they could have met as a means to get some form of aid or information out on what was happening to them. Unfortunately, she would never get the chance to. However, it is important to note that no pencil or writing utensil had been found on the victims' bodies, meaning that writing utensil was one of the few things that was missing from the women, since no other items had been taken. This would eliminate the possibility of this being a robbery gone wrong. However, the possibility of this being the work of a sadist or a genuinely vile human being or beings is a likely theory. Some individuals of note were members of a construction team which was working nearby the day of the incident, specifically 2 members of said construction team, which the media would go on to refer to as K and M, who were allegedly seen down the mountainside sometime around 2 p.m. This would be around the time that the 2 women were killed. The men were described as being delinquents, and one of the 2 men was also noted as being a karate practitioner, and while they were both extensively questioned, the pair would be cleared of any and all suspicions. There were also 15 other individuals who were known to have been in the area during the time preceding the brutal slaying. One of them became the focus of interest for a rather extended amount of time. This was a middle-aged man who just 6 days prior had been speaking about picking warabi. The man was described as being an average salaryman, the type who would wear a polo shirt, trousers, along with leather shoes. It is important to note that sometime prior to the incident, this same man, or a man who appeared almost exactly like him, interacted with a local woman, and the incident went as follows. A middle-aged man with a kitchen knife suddenly walked up and asked a woman, "Madam, are you picking ferns, vegetables?" Said woman was so frightened that she immediately ran away towards her nearby family members. According to the woman, the man was about 170 centimeters tall, or 5'6" to 5'7", and was about 40 to 50 years old. This man quickly became the focus of the investigation due to a set of footprints being found nearby the body being made by shoes which lacked any form of active indentation or markings at the bottom, which would follow if they were leather dress shoes, such as the one the man was described as wearing. However, it is unknown if both individuals are the same man, one being reportedly sighted just prior to the event. However, they did release a sketch of the man, and it is around this same time that a woman around the same age as these 2 victims disappeared around 10 kilometers from where the 2 housewives' remains were found. And while her remains were never found, there was supposedly a bloody trail, which implied that she had been stabbed and dragged away to be disposed of. Another incident would occur later, one which was remarkably similar, in May 1984, which took place in the same city. 48-year-old housewife Keiko Kenoshita was found to have been stabbed with a kitchen knife and left in her home to perish. She had been speared in the back of the neck before having her body wrapped in a futon by a person who would eventually set fire to her house. However, once more, the genetic traces of the individual who had committed this crime only pointed to having O-type blood. One of the most ominous aspects about this is that this individual had also worked in the same supermarket as Aikyo and Keikyo. There are also those who claim that she had been on the mountain with them or going towards it and left just prior to the incident, potentially claiming that she might have been the original target, or she might have been one of the original targets. In essence, she skirted death by the skin of her teeth, only to be met with the same terrible fate. However, there is no concrete evidence of these claims being true. Due to the similarities in their workplaces, along with the manners which their lives were ended, and the time frame of the slayings, it is strongly believed by most that all 4 incidents are linked. Sadly, even after more than 4 decades, these brutal slayings remain unsolved. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.